Here's a riddle. Which U.S. city is so loved that its name should be repeated twice? You guessed it, New York, New York. But the thing is, how much of New York do we really know? I'm talking about the city that lies under the city. Dare to join me on an underground tour of the Big Apple? Then grab a flashlight. It's about to get dark. We'll start in the heart of Manhattan, in the front of the Romanesque City Hall building. Believe it or not, beneath our feet lies New York's oldest subway station, known as the Old City Hall Station. It opened in 1904 on October 27th, a night of true celebration for New Yorkers. People were so excited, some of them spent the entire night riding the trains back and forth. Before this, urban dwellers moved around in carriages pulled by horses. No wonder the subway was such a hit. You might feel like a time traveler stepping inside the Old City Hall Station. The architecture is dazzling and one of a kind. They sure don't make subway stations like this one anymore. Fun fact, the Old City Hall Station would cost $6.2 million if it was built today. Back in the day, it had dozens of brass chandeliers hanging around. It was one of the few spots in town with functioning electricity. And oh, not to mention brand new multicolored tiled arches and stained glass ceilings you can still see today. Impressive, huh? If you decide to wander down the tracks, you might be in for a treat. Underground New York is as fascinating as the city above the ground. But one thing we usually take for granted is the behind the scenes of what the Big Apple needs to function. Down here, you might see one or two of New York's pneumatic mail tubes. These tubes were built back in the 1800s and they were operational up until the 1950s. They were responsible for distributing people's mail through different post offices. Letters flew at an impressive speed of 35 miles per hour. That's almost as fast as a professional runner. It sure sounds like a useful system. But I have to say, it feels weird imagining people's correspondence flying around 15 feet underground. Back to street level. We'll wander around fancy Lexington and Park Avenues. If you look up, you'll see the famous Waldorf Astoria 5-star hotel. Many celebrities have stayed there, including John Lennon and Yoko Ono, as well as presidents such as FDR. This is why the hotel used a secret infrastructure to sneak people inside and out. Under the building, a tunnel known as Track 61 connected the Waldorf Astoria to Grand Central Station. The track was deactivated in the late 70s, but some people say Andy Warhol threw a party there in the 80s. I bet that was something. For the next part of our visit, we'll have to take the subway uptown. We'll get off at 125th Street and find ourselves on the scenic waterfront of Riverside Park. Here, you'll find abandoned tracks of an old metro line. If you follow the tracks, you'll get to an underground graffiti gallery, aka the Freedom Tunnel. The tunnel is named after a graffiti artist from the 80s who is commonly known as Freedom. While exploring these tunnels, we'll see over 40 graffiti pieces he painted over 15 years. There are spray paints of James Dean, Mona Lisa, and even a self-portrait of Freedom himself. Moving on, let's wander around the northern part of NYC for a bit. Walking in Van Cortlandt Park will feel like hiking upstate, but believe me, you're still in the city. Along the way, you'll encounter some big ventilation towers made of stone. These towers were once part of an old New York infrastructure. They make up the remains of what used to be the Croton Aqueduct. In the 1800s, the city's water supply flowed through a 41-mile-long underground tunnel, all the way from Croton River in upstate New York to Bryant Park in Midtown Manhattan. Oh yes, and I should probably tell you that Bryant Park wasn't a park. Instead, it hosted a colossal stone structure that looked pretty much like something ancient Egyptians would build. This 4-acre structure served as the city's water reservoir. It even had a pathway on top so that people could enjoy a nice afternoon stroll while looking at the reservoir's crystalline water. Now, all this exploring might have made you hungry, but don't worry, our next stop includes a yummy treat. We'll have to leave Manhattan and make our way to Brooklyn. In case you didn't know, New York City is made of 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and Brooklyn. Crown Heights, that's our stop. Would you believe me if I told you that beneath these streets lie caves full of aging cheese? How very Parisian of them. To get down there, you'll have to make your way through a century-old building that now works as an office space. Maybe wave hello to all those hard-working people and disappear in one of the stairways that will take you 30 feet below the ground. You won't need a flashlight for this one. The caves are bright and renovated and can hold up to 22,000 pounds of cheese. But hey, it might stink. That's the main reason cheesemakers decided to use underground tunnels to age cheese in the first place. After a bite or two of some delicious cheese, let's keep going. While still in Brooklyn, you might see tons of locals enjoying a sunny day in the McCarran Park pool. This pool is a huge attraction, being 3 times the size of an Olympic pool. As the NYC explorer you are becoming, you might even go for a swim. But hey, there's a much more interesting part to this attraction. The pool was built in the early 1900s, but it was shut down in the 50s. During this time, urban explorers discovered a network of underground tunnels right beneath the pool. And, of course, you can find a secret entrance and get a peek for yourself. There, you'll not only see the pool's filtration and heating system, but also a lot of graffiti from the time the site was abandoned. Neat! This question may sound weird, but have you ever seen a cow in New York? I sure haven't. Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Apparently, New York still has underground tunnels that were constructed for the transportation of cattle. Once New York started to flood with automobiles, cows became a burden for traffic. Until a 200-foot-long cow passage was built below 12th Street to transport the livestock that was ferried over from New Jersey. These days, you won't be able to visit this place in person because the tunnel was most likely destroyed. But historians found blueprints proving its existence. To add to the list, archaeologists discovered a very peculiar fossil a while back. Now imagine peeling off the layers of the city's soil. First, at 15 inches, you'll find a layer of wires. I'm talking TV cables, electricity, and all that. Digging deeper, at 4 feet, you'll see water and sewage pipes. But then, at 15 feet down under the surface of NYC, diggers have found a fossilized shipwreck. The wreck is located right under Broad Street, where there was once shallow water. They believe the wreck dates back to the 1600s. It's 92 feet long and 25 feet wide. Oh, and that's not all. At the intersection of Bowery and Canal Street, engineers stumbled upon a room with its walls and ceiling covered in mirrors. And no one has managed to explain the existence of this bizarre place yet. Our Big Apple underground visit is coming to an end. But we sure did more than just scratch the surface on this one. Before we finish, let's enjoy the best of what NYC cuisine has to offer, a good old bagel. Who knows, maybe next time we'll do Paris or even London. See you soon, explorer.
Wow, looky here. It's New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Hong Kong on the Hudson, the greatest city in the world. New York, New York, the city so nice they named it twice. Alright, I'll stop. You thought you knew this city so well, but underneath all that glitz and glamour is a facade, literally. New York is populated with some of the most iconic urban buildings in the world and home to some of the most unique and famous towers. Who would have known that New York was a front for fake buildings? And the cool thing is that there are plenty to search for. Okay, I'm adding that to my bucket list. So the question is, why do they put these fake buildings all over New York? The city is one of the most vibrant places in the world and requires many infrastructures to keep the city in motion. That means having many industrial structures and buildings in every major district. New York is charming for the design and the buildings. Imagine having industrial structures right next to your favorite pizza parlor or hot dog stand. The designers thought ahead and decided to disguise those industrial infrastructures as fake buildings. They blend with the city so well that they don't stand out. They look like your good old apartment or housing unit with a front door, real-life windows, and even charming balconies where people would hang out. The only thing is that there's nothing behind the facade and no one is allowed inside. So, where in the world can you find these fake buildings? For starters, one of the most popular fake buildings is in Brooklyn. At 58 Joralemon Street, you can find a very typical neighborhood. But between the buildings stands a brick building with a slightly deeper shade than the rest. It has bright open windows that blend in with the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood, except that they're blacked out. At first glance, you might not think of it as anything, but if you pay close attention, the building looks like a glitch from a video game. It was built in 1847, way before New York was considered glamorous. Originally, it was meant to be a regular building, but in 1908, they converted it into a fake building. Don't think you can just try to break in. Even if you could, it's pointless, because it's part of a ventilation fan for the subway. It also serves as an emergency exit for some of the surrounding buildings. Actually, throughout New York, many fake buildings exist to disguise the subway vents for the smoke to escape. All the way to 415 Bruckner Boulevard, the Bronx, this townhouse was designed by the Switzer Group, which is an interior architect company. It's not as charming as the one at 58 Joralemon Street, but it serves a similar purpose: to hide an electric substation for New York's utility company. The city needs these substations to reduce the high-voltage electricity to a lower voltage so it can be distributed locally. Having a building like this popping out of the middle of your neighborhood isn't exactly the smartest way to attract people to the Bronx. That's why the fake townhouse facade is the perfect camouflage. Now, some of these fake buildings don't really hit the mark and stick out like a sore thumb. The people of Manhattan describe the Mulberry Square infrastructure as a complete clunker. After plenty of redesigns and back to the drawing board meetings, the result is still not pretty. The locals compare it to a concrete box. They created windows without glass, which doesn't allow the building to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. But it beats a typical subway ventilation plant either way. There are just so many places to visit and cross off your bucket list. But if you live in China, you can literally stay in the country and visit many iconic cities around the world. The replica cities began when the Chinese economy started booming in the early 90s. They wanted the lifestyle of the rich and famous without wanting to leave their country. They can be comfortable eating their local food and get the feeling of being abroad. The Chinese province of Guangdong has an identical copy of the historical Australian alpine village Hallstatt. The real Hallstatt is centuries old and one of the most charming places to discover. The local people of Hallstatt also had no idea that their home was being built in China. Some people thought that this was controversial, probably because it cost around $940 million to build it. Paris is undoubtedly one of the most charming cities you could ever visit. Its rich history and vibrant culture are enough to catch the first plane to go there. For residents of Tianducheng, that's something they can do anytime they want. The city is also known as Sky City and has a replica of the Eiffel Tower that looks eerily like the iconic one in Paris and built buildings to match the city's visual charm. One of the main things that will break the charm is the farmland surrounding the city. There's barely anyone there, and the streets are always empty, very un-Paris-like. Still, you can find some nice fountains and statues scattered along the streets to give it some spirit. There's laundry hung everywhere, even on the trees. The picturesque fountains are dry and many apartments are empty. Only a few stores are open for business. Even though this looks like a fake city, it's quite real. Some people live here because it's more affordable than other places. 2 hours away from this town is another version of Paris's Pont Alexandre III and a carbon copy of London's Tower Bridge, but with 4 towers instead of 2. Hey, such a bargain! You can also visit the closest thing to Italy, but this time you can go shopping. Florentia Village is an outlet mall that offers an array of shops to lose yourself. The good thing is that this was built by an Italian developer to capture the essence of an Italian village. It has fountains, canals, and mosaics for proper aesthetics. It began in 2011 and has more than 200 shops with many Italian brands and British, US, and Chinese brands as well. The place is so popular that it gets between 10,000 and 25,000 visitors per day. China also has other replica towns that put you in a mini Manhattan called the Yujiapu Financial District. The developer's goal was to make this place the financial center of the world. It was complete with the right landmarks, like the Rockefeller and Lincoln Centers, but the project was halted in 2019, leaving it mainly empty. You can find a typical English town with cobbled streets, Victorian homes, and restaurants that make Thames Town. This place was meant to recreate a European lifestyle fantasy without leaving Shanghai. China also has a Dutch town that has some elements of Amsterdam with windmills and famous canals. They even decided to copy some of the landmarks, like the Netherlands Maritime Museum. Here's a bonus story of Lebanon's thinnest building built out of a dispute. It's the story of two brothers who both inherited unequal plots of land. One of the brothers happened to get a very thin plot of land and couldn't help but be jealous of his brother's nice plot of land. He wasn't pleased. Both of the lands overlooked the Mediterranean Sea in a lively neighborhood of Beirut. So it's no wonder that both brothers couldn't agree on how they should develop their lands. It was obvious that the brother with the most land could build a proper building. The other brother had to improvise. He decided to obstruct his brother's property by constructing a thin building enough to only fit 14 feet at its widest and 2 feet at its most narrow. It was constructed in 1954, and the locals of the area know it as the Grudge. The crazy thing is that the place was once habitable with many visitors enjoying their stay. It's not easy to live there, but it's part of living the experience. The building is still standing, but is empty. Wow, every morning 8.5 million people wake up in New York City. But the Big Apple doesn't belong only to humans. This is the city of ants. There are 17 billion of them here. They live in houses, hide in the grass, crawl under asphalt, and climb trees. For every New Yorker, there's a sneaker box filled with ants. City ants are more fortunate than their forest cousins. They don't have any need to look for food. Millions of people leave behind tons of hot dog crumbs, pizza slices, and coffee drips. Insects just have to wait for a lunch break in an office building. Then they gather around benches in the park or cafe tables. A lot of food is waiting for them there. Over 1 billion. That's how many ants are running through the streets and parks of Manhattan. And in this ocean of insects, scientists have been able to spot tiny reddish-brown creatures. These insects don't fit into any of the 13,000 ant species known to science. They're unique and only live in Manhattan. Their kingdom is between 63rd and 76th Streets. Scientists don't know how long the Manhattans have evolved in isolation. They arrived in the U.S. on ships from Europe and were cut off from the rest of the city's infrastructure. But why go anywhere else if there's enough food? The Manhattan loves fast food, especially corn syrup. Because of such a diet, the insect's body has an increased carbon content. This isn't a problem for the ant, though. Carbon helps it adapt to the dry, warm weather of the concrete jungle. Around 20% of New York City is parks and green spaces. White-footed mice live in these places. Scientists have found out that the mice that live in New York have evolved. They're different from their village relatives. These changes are genetical. It's caused by the diet of white-footed rodents that feed on human food waste. For example, New York mice need enlarged livers to process fatty acids from fast food. Central Park in New York is almost twice the size of the Principality of Monaco. A unique centipede is only found in this green area. The creature, called Hoffman's dwarf centipede, doesn't grow any longer than 0.4 inches. It lives in heaps of dry plants and runs on 41 pairs of legs. This crustacean, measuring only a bit more than 0.3 inches, is called the Socorro isopod. It's one of the rarest animals on the planet. The creature can only be found in a small thermal spring near Socorro, New Mexico. The isopod lives in the water as warm as 90 degrees Fahrenheit and covered with a layer of algae. These are ideal conditions for the creature. To get to Mobile Cave, you'd have to rappel 65 feet down. That's the height of a 4-story building. After that, you'd crawl through narrow passages and swim along a canal with cold water. Sunlight can't get into the cave. The air is poisoned by vapors of ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. This extreme place has been isolated from the outside world for 5.5 million years. A unique ecosystem has formed in this toxic atmosphere. Of all the animals that live there, 33 species of millipedes, scorpions, spiders, and leeches can't be found anywhere else on Earth. These creatures are mostly blind and colorless. Well, why would you need eyes in disguise if you live in complete darkness? Movile's coolest guy is the venomous centipede. Scientists have nicknamed this animal the king of the cave. It doesn't grow more than 2 inches, but for this world, it's a giant. The blind salamander would feel great in the company of strange animals from Movile, but these little monsters are separated by the ocean and thousands of miles. The Movile Cave is located in Romania, where these beauties live only in Texas. Their home is an underground body of water in the San Marcos area. These salamanders grow to be 5 inches long. The name makes it pretty clear that the animal is blind. It does have eyes, but they're pretty much useless. This doesn't stop the salamander from being a skilled snail and shrimp hunter. It senses other animals by feeling the underwater waves they create while moving. The Scottish wildcat lives in the north of Scotland. This animal is different from domestic cats, which love sleeping on the couch. Unlike them, it's a perfect hunter. The creature is 25% larger than the average cat. It's muscular and long-legged. The wildcat's tail is blunt and fluffy, covered in black rings with a black tip on the end. The quokka is called the world's happiest animal. Just look at its smile. This fluffy animal seems to always be ready for a photo shoot. Quokkas are only found in Australia. Around 10,000 animals live on Rottnest Island and several other locations. The creature's cute smile is an evolutionary trait. An open mouth helps it breathe and regulates its body temperature. Oh, by the way, if you try to feed a quokka, you'll have to pay a fine of more than $200. This baby will feel comfortable even if you put it on your little finger. The animal lives only on the island of Madagascar. Scientists have found just 2 tiny reptiles, a male and a female. The researchers have named the nanochameleon Brocchisia nana. It's a mystery to them why it doesn't grow larger than a sunflower seed. The next animal on the list also lives only in Madagascar. Locals call this creature Ai. The unusual lemur spends most of its life in trees and leads a nocturnal lifestyle. This might explain why it looks so tired. Even though the Ai is a lemur, its teeth are like those of a rodent. Its claws resemble sloth's claws, and its body looks like that of a monkey. The animal's fingers and toes are especially frightening. They're long and thin, with pointy claws. Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. This is a giraffe with its trademark long neck. A zebra is grazing nearby. Black and white stripes on its body help the animal reflect sunlight during the day and keep it warm at night. But what if you combine these animals? No need, nature has done this work for you. The okapi looks like a giraffe with a short neck, horse body, and zebra stripes on its legs. The okapi has a long tongue. Males have small giraffe horns on their heads. You can only meet these unusual animals in the African rainforest. If you decide to travel around Africa afterward, you must visit the Ethiopian highlands. That's where you see unique gelada monkeys. And no, they're not named after the Italian ice cream. That's gelato. Don't mix that up. Males look like rock stars from the 70s. They're bright and have cool hair. But don't mess with these animals. They aren't too friendly. Geladas spend most of their time on the ground, and the main part of their diet is the grass they collect during the day. Scientists believe that geladas are the remaining members of an ancient gang of critters. It lived millions of years ago in vast spaces from South Africa to India. Now, imagine people the size of the Statue of Liberty living next to us. Sounds like science fiction. But for the animal world, this is reality. The world's smallest tortoise species, the speckled tortoise, doesn't grow more than 4 inches long. But the Galapagos Islands are home to giant tortoises that reach the length of 5 feet. They also weigh like a sports bike. The largest of them had an incredible weight of 1,000 pounds. The giant Galapagos tortoise lives for 100 years and sleeps 16 hours a day. Due to its slow metabolism, the animal may not eat or drink water for a whole year. Millions of years ago, lizards from South America climbed onto a log. Sea waves carried the log to the Pacific Ocean. The lizards traveled hundreds of miles and ended up on the Galapagos Islands. They had to evolve to adapt to new conditions. Scientists believe this is how the marine iguanas appeared. These unique animals look like dangerous dragons, but in fact, they feed on plants and are totally harmless. Iguanas spend most of their lives in water. To get rid of sea salt that accumulates in the body, these animals literally sneeze salt. Achoo! The lyrebird lives only in southeastern Australia and the island of Tasmania. The bird has such a strange name because of its tail. It looks like a lyre, a stringed instrument of the ancient Greeks. Lyrebirds are known for their ability to imitate other birds, and not only them. The bird copies animal screams, human voices, chainsaw noises, car and fire alarms, and even the click of a camera. About 12,000 years ago, a salt lake appeared on one of Palau's islands. Today, it's called Jellyfish Lake. This 1,500 by 500-foot reservoir is home to 5 million golden jellyfish. These unique creatures swim to the west shore of the lake every morning. There, jellyfish wait for the sunrise. Then, all day long, they follow the sun. Algae lives in the tissues of the jellyfish, feeding them with energy. These algae can't live without sunlight.
Is the Big Apple getting a little too heavy for its own good? A recent study revealed that New York City is sinking. And get this, it's all because of those towering skyscrapers. Apparently, the whole event is called subsidence, which is when the Earth's surface settles bit by bit, or suddenly sinks. Soft sediments shifting and the weight of the city itself are the culprits behind this sinking sensation. Now, don't get too alarmed. The study found that New York is sinking at a rate of 0.04 to 0.07 inches per year. Sure, that doesn't sound like much, but there are parts of the city that are sinking even faster than that. This sinking situation could cause some trouble for the city, especially since it's already pretty low-lying and home to over 8 million people. So it's important that local authorities come up with some strategies to tackle the growing flood risk and rising sea levels. Although, I'm not sure building giant seawalls is the way to go. We might need to get a little more creative than that. Geologists want to make sure we're all aware that building more high-rises near the coast, rivers, or lakes could contribute to future flood risks. So we really need to think twice before we start constructing skyscrapers left and right. In recent studies, scientists calculated the total mass of all the buildings in New York City, over 1 million of them, and it adds up to a whopping 1.68 trillion pounds. Talk about a heavy load. Now, they didn't include the weight of the roads, sidewalks, bridges, and other paved areas, so you can only imagine how much more weight is added to the city. But hey, even with these limitations, the researchers did a pretty good job of accounting for the complex geology beneath New York, including the sand, silt, clay deposits, and good old bedrock. They found out that certain types of soil, like clay and artificial fill, are more prone to subsidence. On the other hand, bedrock stays pretty firm and keeps those skyscrapers in place. So at least we don't have to worry about the Empire State Building taking a dive anytime soon. Comparing their fancy models with satellite data, the researchers created a map of the city showing where the sinking is happening. And guess what? The increased urbanization and all that groundwater pumping and draining are only making things worse. It's high time we start protecting our resources, don't you think? I wouldn't start packing my bags just yet. New York isn't the only sinking city out there, you know. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is facing some serious sinking action too. In fact, parts of it could be underwater by 2050. That's like a real-life Atlantis situation. Over 30 million people in Jakarta are now deciding if they should relocate the entire city. If there's a city out there we should worry about sinking, that's Venice for sure. But why is it so eager to take a dive, you might ask? Well, let me tell you the complex truth. You see, Venice decided to set up shop on a marshy lagoon with shoddy foundations. As time went by, the ground underneath just couldn't hold it together and started compacting like a squished marshmallow. On top of that, the city's been slurping up groundwater like it's going out of style or something. The cherry on top of this mushy cake is that the sea levels have also been slowly rising. And guess what? Those sneaky plate tectonics are having a laugh by shoving the Adriatic plate under the Apennine Mountains, giving Venice an extra push downward. Someone had the bright idea to stop pumping groundwater, thinking they could stop the sinking shenanigans. But hold your gondolas. A new study revealed that the sinking hasn't completely stopped, just slowed down a bit. It turns out the whole area is tilting ever so slightly to the east, with Venice perched on the slightly higher end. You must be wondering how much Venice sinks in a year, right? Brace yourself for this shocking revelation. It's sinking at a rate of about 0.04 to 0.07 inches a year, similar to New York. At this pace, in the next 20 years, it could sink a whopping 3 inches below sea level. To avoid turning into a Venetian fishbowl, locals are frantically building special barriers to keep the water from crashing into the lagoon. But don't hold your breath, because this project has had more delays than you'd expect. Oh, and have you noticed that charming old-style vibe in Venice? It's not just because they're fans of the vintage look. Those salty waters have been wreaking havoc on the buildings, thanks to the water levels constantly breaching the original damp-proofing. Now the water's cozying up to the masonry, and the ground floors of many apartments are no longer safe enough to live in. Now, when will Venice take a dive into the abyss? It's hard to say for sure. Subsidence and rising sea levels are as slow and unpredictable as a turtle in a marathon. But experts have playfully warned that if things continue as they are, Venice could be doing the backstroke beneath the waves by 2100. Fear not, though. They're doing their best to protect this floating gem of history and culture from becoming a Hollywood disaster flick. So don't cancel that Venice day trip just yet. New Orleans has a peculiar watery situation going on too. You see, this lively place was initially built just a smidge above sea level, and now it's gradually sinking. Back in the day, when an area of the city called the French Quarter was just popping up, folks had to make do with what they had. They scored the best land they could find, but it was only about 10 feet above sea level. And let's not forget, the rest of the city is as flat as a pancake, with the areas around the French Quarter being just a hair lower. Now, even though they knew they were up against some soggy odds, the resourceful New Orleans residents did their best to elevate their houses above the flood-prone land they chose as their home. There's more. The ground beneath New Orleans is as wobbly as a plate of Jell-O. Architects had to keep things short and sweet because they feared the soil couldn't handle the weight of taller structures. They played it safe, sticking to 2 or 2.5 stories. Here's where it gets interesting. The city installed a fancy drainage system in the 1900s, thinking it would solve their water woes. And while it did help with the marshes and all, it inadvertently sucked the life out of the soil. Yep, the ground was left high and dry, without enough sediment and water to keep it steady. As a result, those former marshes sank as if they were in a quicksand competition. By the 1930s, things got even more topsy-turvy. 1/3 of the city was below sea level, and by the time Hurricane Katrina made its grand entrance, that number skyrocketed to around 50%. Oh, and here's the icing on the cake. Sea levels decided to join the party, rising faster than a helium balloon. So now, not only is New Orleans sinking, but the surrounding area is also at various degrees below sea level. So, what can we do about all these sinking cities? Well, for instance, we could manage our water consumption a bit better. We can't just keep sucking groundwater out of the earth like there's no tomorrow. We've got to find new ways to quench our urban centers' thirst. Think about it. We could purify surface waters, or even turn salty seawater into a sweet solution. Of course, we'll need a boatload of energy to make it all work. Speaking of great urban water management, let me tell you about a town in Denmark called Nye. These guys have got it all figured out. They collect rainwater and use it to supply their toilets and washing machines. Talk about resourcefulness. Now that's what I call a splash of genius.
Welcome to one of the most iconic buildings in New York City. Its official name is the Fuller Building, but thanks to the sharp 25-degree top corner, people began to associate the tower with a flat iron. And today, the name Flatiron is stuck both to the skyscraper and the entire district around it. This unusual cake-slice shape has turned the building into a famous tourist destination. It has popped out in many movies, TV programs, and magazines. So you probably recognize this property, even if you've never been to Manhattan. Surprisingly, today the 285-foot-tall Flatiron is almost empty. And these fancy walls hide a pretty mysterious dispute between their owners. But first things first. In 1901, construction enterprise Fuller Company purchased a sharp triangular plot of land on the crossroad between Broadway and Fifth Avenue. They hired an architect from Chicago, Daniel Burnham, to design the company's new headquarters. The task was to maximize every inch of available space. So Burnham produced a project of a 22-story triangular tower made of steel. The Flatiron building resembled the shape of a Greek column, which means that its top and bottom are slightly wider than the middle. Fuller Company approved the design and demolished several old buildings to clear the space for the future tower. Construction progressed rapidly, and it was completed within a year. Yes, they used to be able to do that. The Flatiron became one of the earliest buildings to have steel for its structural frame instead of load-bearing masonry. Also, it became one of New York's first skyscrapers and the first steel skeleton structure visible to the public. The curtain wall cladding was also then innovative. The builders used terracotta and limestone to wrap a chic finish look around the steel structure that carried the building's weight. At that time, many people believed that this unusual architecture would fail to withstand high winds. The project's engineers analyzed the tower's aerodynamics and created a steel frame to fight likely problems with the wind. But people still reported experiencing heavy gusts on the street around the building. The Flatiron building had a bunch of other issues. As you may imagine, furnishing this tight space was quite a challenge. Also, the tower didn't originally have any bathrooms for females. That's why lady tenants were at a disadvantage at first. But then the management added ladies' rooms and placed them on odd-number floors. Meanwhile, bathrooms for males were placed on even-numbered floors. Also, the first elevators in the building operated on a water hydraulic system, so it took over 10 minutes to get to the top. Now you can see why that system didn't catch on. It's not surprising that the media expressed skepticism over the new building. Some even called it Burnham's folly. But despite the naysayers over the years, the tower has been home to many companies and retail tenants. Also, the Flatiron attracted crowds of people. Gradually, it became a frequent sight in paintings and postcards, and turned into one of the most popular symbols of New York City itself. In 1929, during the Great Depression, the tower was sold at an auction for only $100,000. And in 1966, it got the status of an official city landmark. It means that any renovation or demolition works are impossible without the official permission of the authorities. Furthermore, in 1989, the Flatiron received the fancy status of a National Historic Landmark. The last tenants left the building in 2019, and it is sat empty ever since due to renovation works, which have triggered many disputes among the building's current owners and future tenants. Most of the owners wanted to turn the building into a hotel. Meanwhile, Nathan Silverstein, who owned a 25% stake in the property, wanted to divide it up. Finally, in 2023, the local court organized an auction on the building. The owners, who held 75%, intended to buy out Silverstein's stake to put an end to all disputes over the future of this building. The bid started from $50 million and the price soared to $190 million thanks to an unexpected bidder, Jacob Garlick. Surprisingly, he beat out everyone and won the auction. Some considered the price that he offered too high because the building required at least $100 million worth of renovation. Hey, it gets better. Garlick disappeared after the auction. He has never paid anything, not even the deposit, and he hasn't yet explained himself to the media. So for now, Garlick's location and intention remains unknown. Little did we know that it's possible to show up at a luxurious auction in New York, outbid everyone, and then just vanish into space. Well, according to some experts from the real estate world, it's a very weird situation for a building auction. Usually the bidders are asked to prove their funds in advance. Some people suspect that Silverstein asked Garlick to attend the auction on purpose so that he could boost the price and earn more money. But Silverstein claimed that his relationship with Garlick had been distant. On May 20th, the second auction took place. Garlick was absent, but a coalition of syndicates and previous owners won the bid and acquired the Flatiron for $101 million. They haven't yet announced any plans, so today the future of the Flatiron remains uncertain. The age of the Flatiron building is only around 121 years, but this famous and beloved symbol of New York has survived so many chapters, from challenging traditional architecture to surviving multiple crises, including the Great Depression. So, chances are that this iconic tower will surprise us in the future. Oh, by the way, the Flatiron is not the only skyscraper with issues in New York City. Here's the famous half-built Leaning Tower of Manhattan. A 670-foot skyscraper is located at the corner of South Street and Maiden Lane on the East River. The tower was to host 80 super fancy condos to sell for up to $7 million each. The developer also planned to offer yacht services to the tenants. A pre-sale of this luxurious but unfinished project was launched in 2018. But in 2020, the tower began to lean 3 inches to the north. The developer put construction on hold and initiated a huge investigation to figure out why this tower refused to stay straight. Although the reason remains unclear, the consensus appears to be that a weak foundation is to blame. You think? And now, welcome to the Waldorf Astoria, a former host to authorities, royal families, and Hollywood stars, and maybe not so welcome. This Art Deco masterpiece is the very place where Marilyn Monroe once stayed and where Grace Kelly got engaged to Monaco's Prince Rainier III. But in 2017, the famous hotel was closed for a multi-billion-dollar renovation. The property's new Chinese owners, Anbang Insurance, plan to partially turn the hotel rooms into condo apartments by 2019. The condo price was planned to reach up to $18 million per unit. But eventually, something went wrong, and the date of the project completion was postponed until 2025 at best. Although, according to the media, the renovation might have already cost around $2 billion. Some insiders mention poor coordination within the project caused by the dismissal of its American director. They also blame the property's new owner, Dagia Insurance Group, which took over the project after the chairman of Anbang was sent to prison for fraud in 2018. To date, the future of the Waldorf Astoria remains unclear. So I'd try another hotel if you're visiting the Big Apple. And here's another heartbreak hotel story. In 2019, a development firm, Chetrit Group, launched the construction of a 33-story hotel near Madison Square Garden and Penn Station. The project was supposed to open in 2021 and join the management portfolio of IHG Hotels and Resorts, which runs multiple hotels. However, the developer failed to either repay its loan or complete the construction on time. Meanwhile, the hotel remains unfinished, and the estimated investment for its completion totals around $106 million. Hey, you want to finish the job?
The Statue of Liberty wasn't always the iconic green color that we know today. The statue originally consisted of copper skin over the iron framework, making Lady Liberty appear a bright bronze color. Over the years, the copper began to oxidize, forming a protective layer called patina and creating a bright green hue. It took 30 years for Lady Liberty to turn fully green. If the statue's sculptor Bartholdi had it his way, Lady Liberty would never have been green, or even copper for that matter. The architect originally intended for the statue to be a lighthouse. In order for the lighthouse to be visible at night, Bartholdi planned to wrap the entire sculpture in gold leaf so that it would glow under the moonlight. This idea was rejected because it would have been far too expensive. New York isn't the only city to have its own Lady Liberty. You can find a much smaller version of the sculpture within the entrance hall to this famous museum in Paris. This mini Lady Liberty was crafted by Bartholdi shortly after the original statue was erected for the 1900 Paris Exposition, a world fair held in France to celebrate the achievements of the previous century. There's gold in the metal the torch is made of, but if you look closely at it, you can see that it's not the original torch that was brought here from France. About 100 years after the statue was installed, in 1986, frequent rains and leaking water damaged the torch, and it had to be replaced. At first, the old torch was displayed as a museum piece just inside the pedestal at the entrance. But recently, a new museum was built on the island, and the torch was moved there. Some rumors about the statue say that Thomas Edison once wanted to make it speak. He wanted to put a huge phonograph in it, the sound of which could have been heard even in Manhattan. Good thing this never became reality. It would have been unbearably noisy on the island, and it would have sounded creepy. Lady Liberty arrived from France on June 17, 1885, in over 300 copper pieces in 214 crates on the French ship Isère. It got into a terrible storm and nearly sank. The statue could have been moved to Baltimore, Boston, San Francisco, or Philadelphia. When New York didn't have enough money to pay for the pedestal, these cities were willing to pay for the whole construction on condition of its relocation. In 1983, David Copperfield made the statue disappear in front of a crowd. They were sitting on a platform, and the illusionist opened the curtain and showed them a big empty nothing in Lady Liberty's place. In reality, the platform was slowly moving until it reached an angle from which the statue couldn't be seen behind one of the towers on the platform. It's believed that Charlotte, the mother of Frederick Bartholdi, who was the statue's sculptor, became the model for its face. In 1876, one French senator met her at the opera. He was shocked to see a live version of the statue. Some people think that Lady Liberty has a male face. According to them, it doesn't look much like Bartholdi's mother, but is a copy of his brother. Frederick knew his face in every detail because he spent hours watching his brother at the hospital. In the summer, the crown of the statue becomes a temporary home for peregrine falcons. In the winter, owls are often seen there. Many other bird species migrate through Liberty State Park in the spring and fall months, including rare ones. The last official residents of Liberty Island were the family of the superintendent of the Statue of Liberty. They had free housing at Liberty Island until their home was damaged in a 2012 hurricane. At 305 feet tall, when the Statue of Liberty was first built, it was the tallest iron structure in the world. Of course, that has now been far surpassed. The tallest building in the world, Dubai's Burj Khalifa, has a staggering height of over 2,700 feet. That's almost 9 times taller than the Statue of Liberty. The famous sculpture is weatherproof. Lady Liberty is struck by around 600 bolts of lightning every year since she was built. Some photographers have been lucky enough to catch these moments. She's also survived hurricanes, ocean changes, and countless storms. The Statue of Liberty was designed to sway in the wind. During heavy winds, Lady Liberty can sway up to 3 inches in any direction, and its torch can sway 5. The weight of the statue can be compared to the weight of an empty Boeing 737. But this is only the outer skin of Lady Liberty. The metal construction inside, that is, stairs, pylons, and supports, weigh another 125 tons. It's like a small train locomotive. And the concrete base underneath weighs an impressive 27,000 tons. That's like a fleet of 11,000 heavy SUVs, or 180 of the largest blue whales. It took the workers 4 months to fully assemble the statue on the finished pedestal. The statue is connected to the pedestal, so it can't be lifted separately. And the entire metal structure inside can be seen through the glass ceiling of the pedestal. Although interior work was still in progress, you could already see the statue in all its beauty. There's a star-shaped base on the ground. It's the remains of the former Fort Wood on the island. Next comes the granite pedestal, which has its own observation deck, and the statue itself. Visiting Lady Liberty is a good workout. Visitors need to climb 354 steps to reach the crown. Inside the crown, there are 25 windows, providing stunning panoramic views of New York City. It's also much smaller than you thought it would be. Lady Liberty's crown is adorned with 7 individual spikes. Some say these spikes represent the 7 oceans and continents of the world, bearing the universal concept of liberty. Others think they represent rays of sunshine. The Statue of Liberty was first assembled near Parc Monceau in Paris. The locals loved her so much, they called her Lady of the Park. They used 300 different kinds of hammers to shape the copper, which was the weight of an African elephant, into the statue. The statue was finished thanks to one of the first crowdfunding campaigns in history. First, French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, who created the statue, raised funds in his country to build it. Then, over 120,000 donors in the US joined in to give it a pedestal. Lady Liberty received a new torch with a flame during the 1984 renovation. It's made of copper and covered in 24-karat gold leaf. The original torch had to be replaced because of water leakage. You can now see it at the Statue of Liberty Museum. During the same renovation, the statue got a nose patch and a better supporting structure. The original one was slightly imperfect. They found out the head had been installed 2 feet off center, and the arm was 18 inches away from the body. The Lady of the Harbor is as tall as a 22-story building. Her face is as long as a queen-size bed, and her hands are twice as long. If this lady ever wanted to buy shoes, they'd have to be a size 879. Her waistline is as long as a double-decker bus, and she is about 5 times as heavy as a T-Rex. It's practically impossible to see it when you visit, but Lady Liberty is standing on a broken shackle and chains. They stand for breaking free. Her right foot is slightly raised. Bartholdi was thinking of putting chains in the statue's hand first, but ended up giving her a tablet instead. The pedestal now hosts a museum where you can learn all about the statue's history. From there on, you can climb a double metal narrow staircase of 354 steps to the crown. It's so small, it only fits 10 people at a time, but it has an impressive 25 windows. The torch is closed for visitors. Bartholdi was assisted in his designs of Lady Liberty's structure by Gustave Eiffel. He was a famous structural engineer who, you might have guessed from his name, is famous for designing the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel designed the framework and structures that support the Statue of Liberty. Liberty Island was only named so in 1956, 70 years after the statue had been installed. Until then, it was known as Great Oyster Island, then Bedloe Island, after a Dutchman who owned it. At some point, it was also called Love Island by order of Governor Francis Lovelace. You can't travel to Liberty Island by a private ship and dock it there. The only allowed official way to get there is by Statue Cruises Ferry. The Statue of Liberty is 305 feet tall and stands on Liberty Island in New York. It's one of the most famous tourist attractions that the Big Apple has to offer. It was given to America as a gift from France in 1886. The statue was designed by a French sculptor called Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi. The face of the statue is thought to be based on Bartholdi's mother, Charlotte. The statue's full name is the Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World, which is a bit of a tongue twister. We'll stick with the shortened version for the rest of this video. The total cost to build the statue was over $500,000. In today's economy, that would be worth about $10 million. It took 5 years to raise the necessary amount of money to build the statue. The project was completed in France in 1885. The statue was then disassembled into 350 pieces so that it could be transported to America. A French ship called Isère transported the statue from Paris to New York. However, a disaster nearly prevented the statue from arriving. The ship almost sank in a bad storm during the voyage. It took 4 months to reassemble the 350 pieces when they arrived in New York. The monument was officially unveiled in October 1886. The statue is made from 300 overlapping copper plates. These copper plates weigh a total of 31 tons. A further 125 tons of iron were used to build the statue's foundation. The statue itself weighs 225 tons. Its crown has 25 windows. They're thought to represent the natural minerals of the earth. The Statue of Liberty was the tallest iron structure ever built when it was unveiled in 1886. But today, it doesn't even crack the top 5 when it comes to the tallest existing statues. Let's take a look at several monuments from around the world, which, in some cases, tower over the famous New York monument. But before we get down to the giants in the world of statues, you should know something. Not all of the most famous statues are physically imposing spectacles. Some of the most renowned monuments are actually quite tiny. This includes the Iron Boy, located in one of the backyards in Stockholm, Sweden. The sculpture depicts a small boy wrapping his arms around his knees. It was created by a Swedish artist called Lis Eriksson in 1967. The statue is only 6 inches tall. The tiny monument's full name translates to Little Boy Who Looks at the Moon, but people shortened it for their own convenience. The Iron Boy receives all kinds of strange gifts throughout the year. Sometimes he can be seen wearing a cap or a scarf. Guests also leave coins, fruits, and sushi on the stone bench where he sits. There's another famous world monument that's literally as tiny as a mouse. Actually, 2 mice. The monument is called the Philpott Lane Mice and can be found in London. It depicts 2 mice fighting over a piece of cheese. The statue was constructed in 1862. The story claims that once, 2 construction workers had an argument. One was accused of having stolen the other's lunch. This tiny monument is said to be left as a tribute to the event. Starting off the top 5 of the tallest monuments in the world is the Statue of Belief. It's found in Nathdwara, India. It stands at an impressive 348 feet tall. The statue depicts Shiva, an important symbol of Hinduism. About 2,200 tons of steel were used in the construction of the massive statue. A 300-square-foot garden surrounds the statue. More than 750 workers took part in the construction of the monument. Its size allows it to be seen from Kankroli flyover, which is roughly 13 miles away. The construction works began in 2012, but the statue was completed just recently. It's probably no surprise that it serves as a major tourist attraction in Nathdwara today. The Yoshiku Buddha statue is located in Tsukuba in Japan. It's the 4th tallest statue in the world, with a height of 393 feet. The monument weighs an incredible 4,000 tons and was built in 1993 to commemorate the birth of Shinran, a famous Japanese monk. The left hand of the monument is 60 feet long. Tourists can ride an elevator to the viewing gallery, located at almost 280 feet. From here, visitors are treated to incredible views. On a clear day, you can see as far as Tokyo Skytree, which is roughly 42 miles away from the monument. The lovely gardens surrounding the statue are full of flowers in season. Visitors can pick some and take them home. You can see cosmos in September and October, poppies in May, and peonies and hydrangeas in May and June. The 3rd tallest monument on our planet is the Laikyun Setkyar. It's found in a village called Katakan Taung in Myanmar. The statue is 423 feet tall. The construction of the monument began in 1996, and it took 12 years to finish. The monument was presented to the public in February 2008. The construction took so much time because it was funded by the public. The monument is a depiction of Buddha Shakyamuni, who many believe to be the founder of Buddhism. The sculpture is painted yellow, which is considered to be the color of wisdom in Buddhism. Each element of the monument is extremely precise and detailed. Many tourists have no idea that inside the monument there's a special elevator that provides access to 27 different floors. Visitors can enter the statue and look at different paintings on the walls of the lower floors. The inside of the monument also houses a temple. The area outside the statue is a popular landmark for tourists too. Here you can find the surrounding garden of Bodhi trees with more than 9,000 plants. Not only are there plenty of plants next to the monument, but there are also thousands of miniature sitting Buddha statues. Keeping with the theme of monuments depicting Buddhas, the runner-up in the competition for the world's largest monument is the Spring Temple Buddha. You'll find it in Henan, China. It's over 500 feet tall. The monument is made up of over 200 pounds of gold, 3,300 tons of copper alloy, and 1,500 tons of steel. It also covers an area of over 11,000 square feet. The diamond seat beneath the statue consists of 6,666 miniature Buddhas. It took 11 years to construct. Construction works began in 1997, and the statue was unveiled in 2008. The entire Spring Temple project cost roughly $50 million, with $18 million spent directly on the materials and construction of the monument. You've waited this long. It's now time to find out the identity of the world's tallest statue. The Statue of Unity is in the state of Gujarat in India. Its height? Just under a record-breaking 600 feet. Worth the wait, right? The statue is a tribute to the Iron Man of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He served as the first Deputy Prime Minister of India from 1947 until 1950. He's credited with merging over 560 princely states into what we now know as the Union of India. Remarkably, when compared to the other statues we've looked at, the Iron Man only took 3.5 years to build. It was constructed by a team of 300 engineers and 3,400 workers. The monument is made up of roughly 70,000 tons of cement and nearly 25,000 tons of steel. 12,000 bronze panels cover the structure. The base of the monument is constructed with over 129 tons of scrap iron, donated by nearly 100 million farmers from across India. All in all, the statue weighs a total of 1,700 tons. The Statue of Unity has a viewing gallery that can accommodate 200 visitors at a time. It also hosts a museum with 2,000 photographs, 40,000 documents and video presentations, and a research center. The whole thing is nearly twice the size of the Statue of Liberty. Wow!
Tourists visit them daily, scrambling for the perfect selfie with some of the world's best-known attractions. But I'm sure you're unaware of these little secrets some of these places are hiding. I promise that today you will look at these world-famous monuments in a new way. Did you know that the Statue of Liberty has a second name? The Liberty Enlightening the World. And what's hidden in a box under the statue, right here? This massive structure stands watch over the entrance to New York Harbor, welcoming travelers from around the world. And there's a lot about this beautiful lady that may surprise you. Designed by sculptor Frédéric Bartholdi, France gifted it to the United States in 1884. That's a pretty nice present, but there was a catch. Already built and much too big to move, it was dismantled entirely, packed into 200 crates, and shipped across the ocean. Then, workers put it back together in New York like a giant 3D puzzle. And though many assume the statue is made of stone, it is not. The outside is actually thin sheets of metal. Originally, Bartholdi wanted these sheets to be made of pure gold, creating a truly impressive sight. But at 305 feet tall, the expense was too great. He opted for copper, a cheaper material instead. The one drawback, copper turns green over time. When the metal comes in contact with oxygen, it results in a chemical reaction called oxidation. The Statue of Liberty was originally the color of a shiny new penny. Not as impressive as gold, but pretty spectacular. For 25 years, it changed to a darker brown, then slowly faded to the light green it is today. Because the statue is hollow, you can actually go inside and walk up to her head. I hope you've been working out though. You have to climb 354 stairs to make it to the crown. Though initially open to visitors, the torch is now out of bounds. It was damaged in 1916 and has remained closed ever since. Maybe avoid visiting when the weather is bad. In heavy winds, the Statue of Liberty sways up to 3 inches, while the torch can move as much as 5 inches. I would turn as green as the statue itself. Oh, and it's hit by nearly 600 bolts of lightning every year. Shocking, I know. There's also a secret box tucked away beneath the statue. It contains a copy of the US Constitution, 20 bronze medals, and a portrait of the statue's designer. Another well-known monument takes us over the Atlantic Ocean to Paris, France. It's the Eiffel Tower. And though appreciated now, did you know it was once so disliked it almost never got built? Or that the engineer added a special floor just for himself when the tower went up? Engineer Gustave Eiffel built it for the 1889 World's Fair. At 1,083 feet tall, it's the same height as an 81-story building. Once finished, it was the tallest human-made structure in the world and remained the tallest for 41 years until the construction of the Chrysler Building in New York City. Before being built, the public received a sneak peek of the designs. People were not impressed. They called it everything from a truly tragic street lamp to a belfry skeleton, and residents, along with the Champ de Mars where the tower was going to be built, actually went to court to block its construction. But authorities sided with Eiffel, and the tower was finally built. Gustave asked the designer of the tower, Maurice Koechlin, to include an apartment at the very top for his private use. It offered a 360-degree view of Paris and had a living room, big enough for a table, a couch, and a piano, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. Talk about a luxury penthouse in the sky. Let's take a quick hop over to London next to check out the Big Ben. But which part of the structure does the name actually refer to? You might be surprised. Big Ben is actually the name of the bell, not the tower. That's right. You're more likely to hear Big Ben than see it. It's located in the Clock Tower, which was renamed Elizabeth Tower in 2012. And the only visitors allowed to enter Elizabeth Tower and see Big Ben are residents of the United Kingdom. Everyone else can only admire it from afar. Pity. The bell weighs 16 tons, the same as 4.5 hippos, and is 7 feet tall. Not far from here is the impressive London Eye, Europe's biggest wheel at 443 feet tall. Less than 30 years old, it still has its secrets. In this case, they involve the number 13, a little romance, and tortoises. There are 32 climate-controlled observation capsules on the giant wheel, but they numbered them from 1 to 33. What? The reason is simple. Designers skipped the number 13 because of its association with bad luck. Next time you take an elevator, you'll notice there's no 13th floor in most buildings for the same superstitious reason. The 32 capsules represent the 32 boroughs, or areas of London. And it is a top-rated tourist destination, receiving more visitors than the Taj Mahal or Stonehenge. And who knew a giant wheel could be romantic? At least 5,000 marriage proposals and over 500 weddings have taken place here. Not a fan of scary rides? You got nothing to worry about. The London Eye moves at a very slow 10 inches per second, which is twice as fast as a tortoise moving at top speed. The ride doesn't even stop to let people on and off. Back to the United States for this next famous monument, the Hollywood sign. Did you know that it used to be bigger? Or the reason it was built in the first place? Don't worry, I'm about to share all its secrets. Developers S. H. Woodruff and Tracy E. Schultz built the original sign in 1923, creating it to advertise real estate. The two men wanted to establish a new neighborhood called Hollywoodland, and the now iconic sign was simply meant to be a giant advertisement to draw home buyers to the area. They planned to remove it after 18 months. In fact, the original sign spelled out Hollywoodland. The city dropped the last 4 letters in 1949. And now, you can only appreciate it from a distance. Tourists are not allowed anywhere near the actual sign. Standing in your way, razor wire, motion sensors, infrared technology, and alarms. There are even helicopter patrols. Yikes! Let's head north to Canada next, to the city of Toronto. When you search along its skyline, you'll see its most famous landmark, the impressive CN Tower. At 1,815 feet tall, it's pretty hard to miss. But what treasure does it hide in a special time capsule tucked away in its walls? It took a whole year for 1,500 workers to build the tower, completed construction in 1974. 2 years later, it was open to the public. Afraid of heights? It might not be a tourist attraction for you. First, the elevators have glass sides and a glass floor as well. It takes 58 seconds, speeding at 15 miles per hour to take you from the ground floor to the observation deck in the sky. And the deck also has glass panels on the floor. Don't worry though, you're not gonna fall through. They're so strong that they can handle the weight of 35 moose. I wonder how they tested that. When the tower opened in 1976, a time capsule was hidden in the wall of the lookout level. Inside, you'll find newspapers, Canadian coins, letters from children, and a letter from Pierre Trudeau. The capsule will remain there until 2076, and there's more. Mount Rushmore actually has a hidden room behind Abraham Lincoln's head, but what's inside? Sculptor Gutzon Borglum initially had a much bolder design in mind, including moments in American history with the 4 heads of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Lincoln. But his ideas were too ambitious. Instead, he was given permission to create a Hall of Records, a secret chamber that would highlight the history of the United States and any important documents. And finally, what's the secret color-changing magic of the Taj Mahal in India? And the reason is surprisingly simple. The large building can be found in the city of Agra in the northern part of the country. It was built by Shah Jahan as a monument and a tomb for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Construction started in 1632 and wasn't completed until 1647. White marble covers the outside of the building and is decorated in jewels like lapis lazuli, jade, turquoise, and amethyst. These are placed to create geometric and floral patterns. But if you look at photos of the building, it doesn't always look the same. The color changes depending on the time of day. It has a lot to do with how the sun reflects off the marble. It may seem pinker at dawn, pure white at noon, and an orange bronze at sunset. Some evenings it may even look translucent blue. A second building was planned, designed by the Shah himself. It was a dark reflection of the original. Instead of white, the plan called for black marble. They never completed it. It's incredible how even more impressive these already cool monuments seem when you know a few of their secrets.
The Statue of Liberty tops out at 305 feet on Liberty Island in New York. It's one of the most famous tourist attractions in the world. With this in mind, all you drone users out there better keep your flying device away from the prized monument. The term drone usually refers to any unpiloted aircraft. It also goes by unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs for short. You can use those crafts for a whole bunch of things, from package delivery to just having some fun. Drones can be as large as an aircraft or as small as the palm of your hand. So why can't drone users get an up-close look at the Statue of Liberty? Well, because the Federal Aviation Administration says so. Drone flights are prohibited within 400 feet of the iconic sculpture. Without the FAA's drone ban, you might have been able to fly your device close to the statue's head. Here, you would have seen that the monument's crown has 25 windows. The windows are thought to represent the natural minerals of the Earth. New York City does its best to keep control of all aircraft roaming above the metropolis. In the late 1970s, New York City banned helicopters from landing on rooftop helipads because of the dangers it presented. This rule is no longer in place. There are still certain restrictions that do exist. However, helicopters are still allowed to take off and land using one of the 3 helipads in the city. They must fly within a certain speed range, turn on anti-collision and position lights, announce their location on the appropriate frequency, and be familiar with the relevant flight charts and maps of New York City. The Statue of Liberty is not the only monument that doesn't welcome drones. The Hoover Dam, the highest concrete arch dam in the U.S., is also a no-fly zone for drones, just like all other dams in the country. National and state parks, sports arenas, and airports are some other places where you shouldn't take your drone for a spin. Across the ocean, in France, the entire city of Paris is a drone-free zone. So, no cool aerial footage of the Eiffel Tower for you, sorry. If you want to get a closer look at Dubai's Burj Khalifa, currently the tallest building in the world, be prepared to file some extensive paperwork. For those who want to get some fun footage of the Sydney Opera House in Australia, flying drones over Sydney and its Harbour Bay isn't allowed for recreational use at all. Professional photographers and filmmakers can apply for a special permit. You know where there's no ban on flying a drone? Into a piping hot volcano. Now, this makes sense as I don't think any normal plane would fancy the expedition. But a man from Oklahoma was willing to sacrifice what I'm hoping wasn't a prized possession. On March 19, 2021, one of the many volcanoes in Iceland, with a name that's too challenging for most mere mortals to pronounce, the Fagradalsfjall volcano began to erupt. It was going on for 6 months. Magma jets produced lava fountains that you could see even from Reykjavik. A first-time drone pilot visiting from the U.S. had managed to get some beautiful footage of that before his drone gadget met its demise. There are lots of interesting things that people are now using drones to do. One of the more practical uses is to clean windows. One German company hopes to automate the washing of glass facades and roofs using drones, even at high altitudes. Now, there's a chance that some of you watching this video right now may be using a drone to do it. How so? Well, some major tech companies are now investing in drone technologies to spread internet access to pretty much the entire world. These devices are solar-powered and meant to fly more than 10 miles above the ground to provide internet access to areas below it. Real estate moguls also utilize drone devices within their industry for aerial photography of properties. Some of your favorite theme parks are now starting to use drones in their magnificent light shows. In 2016, to improve these shows even more, one of the biggest theme parks in the world filed a patent for drone-powered projection technology. In short, the drones would beam down imagery onto a projection assembly. Imagine some larger-than-life versions of your favorite characters from literature and television being projected in front of you from a drone. Pretty awesome, right? Indeed, drones are now rocking the world of entertainment. With such creative advances in drone technology, including planes that can fly by themselves, that's no surprise. With improvements in drones and video capture quality, drones may totally transform the world of film and video. A drone could shoot a scene without any cameraman. All the right pans and tilts will be pre-programmed in advance. One of the most vital and important uses of drones is assistance in emergencies. The ambulance drone, designed at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, comes with an advanced first aid kit and instructs the people nearby on how to use this equipment to save a life. People also use drones in search and rescue operations. They've managed to rescue at least 750 people around the world so far using drone technology. Drones quickly cover large areas and can reach the hardest to access spots. These drones use thermal and zoom cameras for searching. Ever been waiting for the delivery driver to arrive with your pizza or a new pair of shoes that you just bought online? Some of your favorite delivery companies are also using drones. Those come with sensors that allow them to avoid obstacles along the way. They land the package safely next to a customer's home or other location and return back to base. They're perfect for non-urban areas. You can use several different types of drones for this purpose, depending on delivery conditions and how big the pizza is. This all sounds very modern and high-tech, but drones have actually been around for a long time. Drones have been helping the Japanese agriculture industry for about 30 years already. It takes the farmer 2 days to do the work that would otherwise take 10 days, thanks to drones. They've helped produce about 1/3 of all rice consumed in the country today. Robots, in general, have been helping us humans for a while now. In 2014, Royal Caribbean, a famous cruise line brand, debuted its supposedly bionic bar. The robotic bartenders made 2 drinks each minute for the guests and a total of 1,000 drinks per day using 21 mixers. Marco Pelle from New York Theater Ballet became the inspiration for the robotic bartender's arm movements. We now also see robots while watching some of our favorite sports. During most competitions, human officials have often been responsible for retrieving the ball when it goes out of play and other game day equipment like water bottles. These human officials can now take some time to get some rest. For the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Toyota developed a series of field support robots to carry out the same tasks I've just described. The idea was to make it easier for the human officials. The robots don't always want to stay on the sidelines either. In 2019, Toyota also produced an AI-powered humanoid basketball player. The same player made history when they awarded it the Guinness World Record for most consecutive basketball free throws by a humanoid robot. At the 2020 Olympics, the robot impressed the public at the free throw line shooting buckets. And admit it, you wouldn't mind a robot helping you out with some boring chores. Renowned technology company Samsung has produced a robotic assistant known as Bot Handy. The robotic assistant can help the owner with a bunch of things around the house, from pouring drinks at the dinner table to putting away dirty dishes and tidying up after its human roommates. What was that? Yep, robotic dogs may soon replace our fluffy pets. Semi-autonomous patrol dogs that can successfully carry out patrol operations already exist. This means you can go see your neighbors or friends knowing that a robo-doggy is going to keep your home secure. Or, in case you don't need a guard, but a loyal buddy, an AI pet robot will be perfect for you. Those guys can even show emotions. They learn and grow based on interaction with the owner and the evaluation of the surroundings. Kind of scary actually. Nah, I'll keep my dog. She doesn't need batteries. So I took a little vacation and traveled to the other side of the country, to New York. The Big Apple. The city where more than 8 million people live. The home of Broadway, the Empire State Building, Central Park, and the Statue of Liberty. Now, Lady Liberty came to the United States from France back in 1885 in over 300 copper pieces. She came with instructions, some assembly required, batteries not included. She was a gift from the French people to the Americans, but the receiving party had to prepare the pedestal for her themselves. Instead of New York, the statue could have ended up in Baltimore, Philadelphia, Boston, or even San Francisco. All of these cities were willing to pay for the construction if they got the statue, but New Yorkers wanted it too. They started the fundraising campaign and managed to get all the money needed. So the statue officially called New York home in 1886, where it still resides. Sorry, Philly, I like your cheesesteaks though. Anyway, the Statue of Liberty was my first stop, and I was very excited, but I had no idea what was to come next. Day 1. I arrived at New York City, and first thing, I took the ferry to Liberty Island. I could see her already, far away in the middle of the harbor. As the ferry approached the statue, all the people started to make pictures with her. I wasn't an exception. I asked someone to take a selfie of me, turned away from the statue, looked in the camera, and smiled. But the guy looked shocked. I asked him what was wrong, and he couldn't say anything. He just pointed to the Statue of Liberty. Well, to where it used to be. Because the statue was just gone. He said it was there, but the next second, it just disappeared. Other people saw that too and started to ask each other what happened, but no one had any idea. Still, we reached the dock and got out of the ferry. It felt like it was just some trick, but apparently it wasn't. The Statue of Liberty was really gone, and its pedestal was totally empty. Of course, there were some people who climbed up on it, pretending to be the Statue of Liberty themselves and taking photos. Very soon, authorities arrived and didn't let anyone leave the island. They said they wanted to make an investigation and catch the thief, since the thief should still be there on the island, as if it's actually possible to steal the Statue of Liberty. They interrogated every single person on the island. We spent the whole day there, and in the end, they had to let us go. Who had the Statue of Liberty hidden in their pockets? What a surprise. Day 2. That was one crazy case, so I decided to stick around in New York for a while to watch how the situation would progress. Of course, in the morning, it's all in the newspapers, magazines, and on TV talk shows. All the Times Square banners are showing the photos of the statue with headings, "Have you seen me?" "The Statue of Liberty is gone," and even dramatic ones like, "The theft of the century! The Statue of Liberty is stolen!" Well, the whole Big Apple is mourning the loss. There is some crazy number of people colored in blue-green, like the patina on the statue, wearing dresses and the souvenir foam crown of Miss Liberty. By the way, all the local souvenir stores ran out of those, as well as all those little plastic statues of Liberty too. I'm trying to avoid Instagram or any other social networks. Every celebrity and every single user posts pictures of the statue with a crying emoji and a broken heart. The internet turned into one big memorial. In the evening, the Empire State Building is shining blue-green in honor of the missing statue. Day 5. New York City is even more crowded now. It seems like all of America came to the city to make sure that the statue is actually gone and it's not some internet hoax. Like we need another one of those. Now, the edge of Manhattan from where the ferry used to go to Liberty Island is overcrowded. There are many super loyal fans colored in blue-green, who honestly freak me out a bit, who are staying there all day long, waiting for the statue to somehow come back. No one is allowed to go to Liberty Island. All the best detectives of the world arrive there to investigate this case, trying to figure out what could have happened. Day 10. France officially announced that they'll make a new Statue of Liberty for New York. Well, that's super nice of them, but people keep crying, saying that no new Statue of Liberty can replace the original one, so dearly loved. Do you remember that back in 1885, there were other cities like Boston and Philadelphia that wanted to get the statue? Well, now they're blaming New York for losing a 151-high statue weighing 450,000 pounds, claiming it never would have happened had the statue been set in Boston or Philly, which honestly sounds absurd. Also, did you know that there's more statues of liberty in the world? There's a smaller version of it, which was given by the U.S. citizens to France a couple of years after the original one was set in New York. This little monument, just 37 feet high, has been standing near the Grenelle Bridge in Paris. Well, until a couple of days ago. To comfort the Americans, France transported the little copy from Paris to New York, and they put it on the pedestal instead of the one that was gone. Well, given that this one is more than 10 times smaller than the original, it looks a bit funny. But I guess New Yorkers just can't imagine New York without one, even if it's just a replica. Also, there's a life-size copy of Lady Liberty's torch standing in Paris. Well, that one was also transported to New York and set on Liberty Island as a monument. Meanwhile, the folks in Las Vegas at the New York Casino and Hotel are staying awfully quiet for some reason, trying to stay under the radar about that statue ruckus. Day 20. The world started a huge fundraising campaign to raise the money for the new Statue of Liberty, and then it ended. It took just 2 hours and 47 minutes to raise all the $100 million that was needed. Almost 2 billion people from nearly every single country in the world donated. The construction is going to start in 2 weeks in Paris, France, just like in the good old times. And then it'll be transported to the US again. Boston is still trying to insist that we shouldn't trust New York with the statue anymore. But I don't think they'll manage to persuade the world because this little replica on the pedestal still looks funny. I'll never get used to it. Also, starting today, tourists are allowed to travel to Liberty Island for the first time since the incident. It seems like all of New York wants to visit the island now, so the authorities had to go with a digital queue. All the tickets for the next 2 months are already booked, and it happened in less than 10 minutes. Well, given the 8 million New Yorkers and more than 250 million tourists New York City welcomes every year, I think I'll be able to visit the island about, next decade. Day 31. Crazy news. Can't believe it. The Statue of Liberty, and I mean the original one, is back. They say it appeared in the middle of the night. The smaller replica is now standing next to the pedestal, and the original Lady Liberty is in its rightful place. I needed to see it, so I rushed to the harbor, just like everyone else in New York. It actually is back. No one still knows what happened. The great minds of the world still can't solve the mystery. David Copperfield has an airtight alibi. But if you ask me, I think that the statue just left by itself. Maybe it just needed a vacation. I can picture it chilling on a beach in Central America. Can't blame it. Standing there for more than 100 years without a single day off, always being patient with all the people constantly taking pictures of you. That's not an easy job. I'm glad it took a little vacation. Maybe we won't lose it for another 15 decades. Hey, we were all worried, and she's standing there like nothing happened. Chill out, people. I'm back! If you look very closely at the face of Lady Liberty, you can clearly see that the famous statue was inspired by none other than 50s pop star Elvis Presley. Nah, I'm just messing with you. The Statue of Liberty was designed by Frederick August Bertolli 60 years before Elvis was even born. Hey, don't be cruel. People have different opinions about who really inspired the face of Lady Liberty. According to one theory, the model for her was the beautiful Isabella Boyer. Isabella was born in 1841 to a wealthy family in Paris. When she turned 22, she moved to New York to marry an American entrepreneur and became a socialite. Isabella eventually moved home to Paris, where she met the famous sculptor Bartholdi. She was 38 at that time and still a strikingly beautiful woman. It was around this time that she was rumored to have modeled for Bartholdi's designs of the Statue of Liberty. Now, many people believe that Bartholdi modeled the face of Lady Liberty after someone much closer to him, his own mother, Augusta Charlotte Bartholdi. She was the youngest of Charlotte's 4 children. She had a close relationship with his mother throughout his life, so it would make sense that he would want to dedicate one of his most famous works to her. Lady Liberty was created as a beacon of hope and strength for immigrants arriving to the new land. To Bartholdi, his own mother also represented these things. Charlotte raised her children as a single mother and encouraged them to pursue their dreams. There's another theory that suggests that Lady Liberty might not be modeled after a Western white woman like previously thought. As a young man, Bartholdi went on a trip to Egypt, and after seeing the pyramids, he was inspired to create colossal sculptures. Older and more successful, Bartholdi returned to Egypt to propose a new sculpture at the entrance of the Suez Canal. The sculpture was to be called Egypt Carrying the Light to Asia, and depicted a cloaked figure holding a torch to guide travelers through the canal. Sound familiar yet? In Bartholdi's original sketch, the face of the cloaked figure was modeled after an Egyptian peasant. Eventually, the money ran dry, and the sculpture wasn't commissioned after all. Bartholdi later recycled the design of the sculpture, changing the image of a young peasant to a Western-looking woman, creating the iconic statue that we know today. Another theory suggests that Lady Liberty might not even be a lady at all. Author and Statue of Liberty scholar Elizabeth Mitchell believes that Bartholdi did model Lady Liberty's face after a family member, but not his mother. Upon studying the statue's face, Elizabeth noted that Charlotte Bartholdi had a slightly different face structure than Lady Liberty. In the early years of his career, Bartholdi was a bust maker known for his accuracy, so these slight discrepancies didn't make sense. When Elizabeth came across pictures of Bartholdi's brother, Jean-Charles, she noticed that his face bore a striking resemblance to Lady Liberty. It's a popular myth that the Statue of Liberty was a gift to the United States from France. But in fact, the statue was completely crowdfunded by activist Edouard de Labouré. He was a huge supporter of Bartholdi's work and encouraged the French people to raise money for the statue. Meanwhile, the American public crowdfunded the money to pay for the pedestal. Bartholdi completed the iconic torch-bearing arm of Lady Liberty years before finishing the rest of the design. The arm was then displayed in Madison Square Garden to encourage the public to donate to the statue. Fundraising from the American public proved to be difficult, until publisher Joseph Pulitzer stepped in. He started a drive for donations and promised that each contributor would receive an honorary shout-out in his famous newspaper, The New York World. This attracted over 120,000 donations and raised enough funds to complete the statue. The statue and pedestal together cost $500,000 to build. In today's money, that would be over $10 million. The statue was completed in France and then shipped to America, split into over 300 copper pieces, each packed in wooden boxes. Over 200,000 Americans waited to greet the ship, carrying Lady Liberty as it arrived in New York Harbor. The statue was assembled on Bedloe's Island, which is now known as Liberty Island. A mistake might have been made when the Statue of Liberty was assembled. During an inspection in 1982, workers realized that her head had been installed 2 feet off-center. Lady Liberty wasn't always the iconic green color that we know today. The statue originally consisted of copper skin over iron framework, making Lady Liberty appear a bright bronze color. Over the years, the copper began to oxidize, forming a protective layer called patina and creating a bright green hue. It took 30 years for Lady Liberty to turn fully green. And we all know it's not easy, being green. If Bartholdi had had his way, Lady Liberty would never have been green, or even copper for that matter. The architect originally intended for the statue to be a lighthouse. In order for the lighthouse to be visible at night, Bartholdi planned to wrap the entire sculpture in gold leaf so that it would glow under the moonlight. This idea was rejected because it would have been far too expensive. Speaking of the statue's size, Bartholdi was assisted in his designs of Lady Liberty's structure by Gustave Eiffel. He was a famous structural engineer who, you might have guessed from his name, is famous for designing the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel designed the framework and structures that support the Statue of Liberty. New York isn't the only city to have its own Lady Liberty. You can find a much smaller version of the sculpture within the entrance hall to this famous museum in Paris. This mini Lady Liberty was crafted by Bartholdi shortly after the original statue was erected for the 1900 Paris Exposition, a world fair held in France to celebrate the achievements of the previous century. Shortly down the road in front of this famous Paris tunnel is the Flame of Liberty. This is a full-size replica of the flame from Lady Liberty's torch covered in gold leaf. This monument was gifted to France in 1989 from donors across the world as a thank you for the Statue of Liberty and as a symbol of the Franco-American friendship. About 4.5 million people visit the famous statue every year. By comparison, around 3.25 million people visit the London Eye each year. This makes the Statue of Liberty one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world. Visiting Lady Liberty is also a good workout. Visitors need to climb 354 steps to reach the crown. I've been there, it's really cool. Inside the crown, there are 25 windows, providing stunning panoramic views of New York City. It's also much smaller than you thought it would be. Lady Liberty's crown is adorned with 7 individual spikes. Some say these spikes represent the 7 oceans and continents of the world, bearing the universal concept of liberty. Others think they represent rays of sunshine. Almost 100 years after the statue was erected, Lady Liberty's torch was given an upgrade. In 1984, the statue's original copper torch was replaced with a new one covered in 24-karat gold leaf. The torch is the only place not accessible to visitors due to damage it previously sustained, making it unsafe for visitors. Lady Liberty is sometimes referred to as the mother of immigrants. In the 19th century, over 9 million immigrants arrived in the United States. They arrived by boat, and the Statue of Liberty was the first thing they would see of the new land. At 305 feet tall, when the Statue of Liberty was first built, she was the tallest iron structure in the world. Of course, that has now been far surpassed. The tallest building in the world, Dubai's Burj Khalifa, has a staggering height of over 2,700 feet. That's almost 9 times taller than the Statue of Liberty. The famous sculpture is also waterproof. Lady Liberty is struck by around 600 bolts of lightning every year since she was built. Some photographers have been lucky enough to catch those moments. She's also survived hurricanes, ocean changes, and countless storms. The Statue of Liberty was designed to sway in the wind. During heavy winds, Lady Liberty can sway up to 3 inches in any direction, and her torch can sway 5.
This is Liberty Island, near Manhattan, New York. And here is our hero, the Statue of Liberty. It's 150 feet tall. It's like 10 giraffes sitting on each other's necks. Compared to the size of a person, you'd have to stand on the shoulders of your 25 friends to reach the torch in its right hand. The concrete base and pedestal make the statue even taller, 305 feet from the ground to the very top. The weight of the statue can be compared to the weight of an empty Boeing 737. But this is only the outer skin of the statue. The metal construction inside, that is, stairs, pylons, and supports, weigh another 125 tons. It's like a small train locomotive, and the concrete base underneath weighs an impressive 27,000 tons. That's like a fleet of 11,000 heavy SUVs or 180 of the largest blue whales. And this is what the statue looked like 135 years ago. Yes, its color is very different. It's the same color you'd see if you cut through an electrical wire, because the entire statue is made of copper. About 20 years after it was installed, it turned completely green. That's because the air and the frequent rains gradually oxidized the metal. And that metal is extremely thin. Designers could have made those sheets of metal thicker, but then the statue would have been even heavier, and it would have fallen under its own weight. A little thinner, and the severe oxidation and corrosion of the metal would have made holes in the statue. The sculptor had thought well about the construction of the statue, and it took more than 10 years to build it. But it all started with this model, made of clay. It was only 4 feet tall, so you'd probably be taller than this mini Statue of Liberty, even with its hand raised. The next model was made of plaster. By increasing the size, the sculptor could add and refine the details of the statue. For example, a detail that you would never be able to see from Liberty Island, or even from the pedestal, it's the shackles. It looks as if the statue had thrown them off, symbolizing freedom. The next model was 33 feet tall, or the length of a school bus. That's about a quarter of the statue's actual size, and it was the maximum size the sculptor could fit in his workshop. Then, the sculptor proceeded to create the full-size pieces. The head and the right hand holding the torch. The other hand held a stone tablet with the Roman numerals embossed on it, signifying July 4th, 1776, the day the United States signed the Declaration of Independence. Another symbolic detail is the crown. The 7 rays on it represent the 7 seas and 7 continents. In other words, the entire world ocean and the entire landmass. So it was time to build the final version of the Statue of Liberty. The constructors needed absolutely all the parts of the statue made of plaster first. Here, its head. They took sheets of wood parallel to each other and pushed them against the model. The edges of the sheets were then shaped so that they perfectly replicated the shapes and curves of the statue. In other words, it was a cast. Then, the wooden structure was placed on the floor and covered with a sheet of copper. All that was left was to shape the sheet of copper into the curves of the statue with hammers and a press. The sheets were then reinforced on the inside with iron straps. This procedure was repeated 350 times. That's how many separate sheets of copper make up the Statue of Liberty. But if you put it all together, it would simply collapse under its own weight, or be blown away by the wind. And that's where Gustave Eiffel comes in. Yes, this is the French engineer who later built the most famous metal structure in the world, the Eiffel Tower. Gustav Eiffel designed the iron pylon that would serve as the spine of the statue, and then smaller metal structures were added around it. Later, all 350 copper plates of the Statue of Liberty would be attached to it. And here you can already see the shape of the future statue. The metal structures repeat the shape of the torch, head, and the tablet in the left hand. Even though this metal structure weighs over 100 tons, it's still quite flexible. So even now, the fully assembled Statue of Liberty sways a bit. In a strong wind, it can swing 4 inches at the top. It took about 10 years to finish the work. The head of the statue was exhibited in a museum in New York, and its hand with the torch in France. It was to raise money for this project. Even then, visitors were allowed inside the head and torch. Now it was time to send the finished statue to New York, so all the sheets of copper and metalwork were disassembled, packed into 214 boxes, and shipped from France across the Atlantic Ocean. It took the workers another 4 months to fully assemble the statue on the finished pedestal. The statue is connected to the pedestal so it can't be lifted separately, and the entire metal structure inside can be seen through the glass ceiling of the pedestal. Although interior work was still in progress, you could already see the statue in all its beauty. There's the star-shaped base on the ground. It's the remains of the former Fort Wood on the island. Next comes the granite pedestal, which has its own observation deck, and the statue itself. Now let's look inside the structure and try to get to the top. We have to go through the doors of a star-shaped base. Then you have a choice. Take the elevator up to the observation deck, or go up the 192 steps. And there are stairs for tourists to go up and another staircase to go down to avoid the crowds and traffic. The stairs take you to the height of a 6-story building, right up to the observation deck. To get to the crown of the statue, we need to go to the 7th floor, where we see a double helix stairway. It runs right inside the iron pylons, the spine of the Statue of Liberty. And this stairway is double because there's a separate section for going up and the other section for going down. There's also some space where you can rest if you get tired while going up. There's also an elevator, but it holds a maximum of 3 people and is only used in emergencies. As you climb, you can see exactly how the metal sheets were attached to the metal frame. And you can also distinguish specific details of the statue, like the folds of the dress and even locks of hair. So, 354 steps done. Congratulations, you've reached the observation deck in the crown of the Statue of Liberty. It's pretty small and only fits a couple of people. You can look out over New York Bay through 25 glass windows. They symbolize the gems of our planet. And there are powerful lanterns behind you that light up the glass. They turn on at night so that passing ships can see the statue's crown glow. Well, actually, entry to the torch is not allowed for tourists, but just for you, we'll open it up for a minute. To get up there, you have to go down. Yes, about to the neck of the statue. There's a hatch that leads through a narrow passage into the right hand of the statue. Then you have to go up the stairs to the wrist, and then another ladder will lead you to the handle of the torch. Open the cylindrical door, and voila! You're on the highest observation deck of the Statue of Liberty. For many years now, only workers have been allowed access here. There's gold in the metal the torch is made of, but if you look closely at it, you can see it's not the original torch that was brought here from France. About 100 years after the statue was installed, in 1986, frequent rains and leaking water damaged the torch, and it had to be replaced. At first, the old torch was displayed as a museum piece just inside the pedestal at the entrance. But recently, a new museum was built on the island and the torch was moved there. There's a myth that says the Statue of Liberty is a gift from the people of France to the United States to celebrate 100 years of independence. But money for the statue was raised on both sides of the ocean, and the sculptor himself was inspired to build it in Egypt by the statue of the Colossus. Plus, the statue was 5 years too late for the 100th anniversary of independence. Other rumors say that Thomas Edison once wanted to make the statue speak. He wanted to put a huge phonograph in it, the sound of which could have been heard even in Manhattan. Good thing he didn't, because then it would have been unbearably noisy on the island, and it would have looked creepy.
Although it's tall and massive, the Statue of Liberty doesn't always stand still. When the wind is strong enough, she sways by around 3 inches, and her torch about twice as much. And then on calm days, if you look closely at her feet, you can sometimes catch her doing a little jig underneath that flowing robe. Not really. You know, there is more than one Statue of Liberty. A bronze replica of its little sister that served as a model for the New York statue stands in the Jardin du Luxembourg in Paris. Yeah, I never took French in school, but I try. A quarter-size replica of the iconic monument is on an island in the Seine River, also in Paris. There is also a life-size gold leaf-colored copy of the torch on entrance to a world-famous tunnel in Paris. I'm not even going to try to say that name. Back in New York, if you look very closely at the face of Lady Liberty, you can clearly see that the famous statue was inspired by none other than the 50s pop star Elvis Presley. Nah, I'm just messing with you. The Statue of Liberty was designed by Frederick August Bartholdi 60 years before Elvis was even born. People have different opinions about who really inspired the face of Lady Liberty. According to one theory, the model for her was the beautiful Isabella Boyer. Isabella was born in 1841 to a wealthy family in Paris. When she turned 22, she moved to New York to marry an American entrepreneur and became a socialite. The real unglamorous story is Bartholdi modeled the face after his mother, who, I guess, Elvis looked like. Now, another theory suggests that Lady Liberty might not be modeled after a Western white woman as previously thought. As a young man, Bartholdi went on a trip to Egypt, and after seeing the pyramids, he was inspired to create colossal sculptures. Older and more successful, Bartholdi returned to Egypt to propose a new sculpture at the entrance of the Suez Canal. The sculpture was to be called Egypt Carrying the Light to Asia and depicted a cloaked figure holding a torch to guide travelers through the canal. Well, that one cost too much, but he kept the idea in his head until another opportunity arose in New York Harbor. This is what the statue looked like 135 years ago. Yeah, its color is very different. It's the same color you'd see if you cut through an electrical wire, because the entire outside of the statue is made of copper. About 20 years after it was installed, it turned completely green. That's because the air and the frequent rains gradually oxidized the metal into a coating called patina. And that metal is extremely thin. Designers could have made those sheets of metal thicker, but then the statue would have been even heavier and it would have fallen under its own weight. A little thinner, and the severe oxidation and corrosion of the metal would have made holes in the statue. The sculptor had thought well about the construction of the statue, and it took more than 10 years to build it. But it all started with this model, made of clay. It was only 4 feet tall. So you would probably be taller than this mini Statue of Liberty, even with its arm raised. The next model was made of plaster. By increasing the size, the sculptor could add and refine the details of the statue. For example, a detail that you would never be able to see from Liberty Island or even from the pedestal. It's the shackles by her ankles. It looks as if she has thrown them off, symbolizing freedom. The next model was 33 feet tall, or the length of a school bus. That's about a quarter of the statue's actual size, and it was the maximum size the sculptor could fit in his workshop. Then the sculptor proceeded to create the full-size pieces, the head and the hand holding the torch. The other hand held a stone tablet with Roman numerals embossed on it, signifying July 4, 1776, the date of American independence. So it was time to build the final version of the Statue of Liberty. The constructors needed all the parts of the statue made of plaster first. Here's its head. They took sheets of wood parallel to each other and pushed them against the model. The edges of the sheets then were shaped so that they perfectly replicated the shapes and curves of the statue. In other words, it was a mold. Then, the wooden structure was placed on the floor and covered with a sheet of copper the thickness of a penny. All that was left was to carefully shape the sheet of copper into the curves of the statue with soft wooden mallets and a press. The statue and pedestal together cost $500,000 to build. French supporters raised funds to build the statue, and Americans paid for the pedestal it would stand on. In today's money, that would be over $10 million. The statue was completed in France and then shipped to America, packed in hundreds of wooden crates. Over 200,000 Americans waited to greet the ship carrying Lady Liberty as it arrived in New York Harbor. The statue was assembled in 4 months on Bedloe's Island, which is now known as Liberty Island. Now, a mistake might have been made when the Statue of Liberty was assembled. During an inspection in 1982, workers realized that her head had been installed 2 feet off-center. Yeah, sometimes I feel like that too. Shortly down the road, in front of this famous Paris tunnel, is the Flame of Liberty. This is a full-size replica of the flame from Lady Liberty's torch covered in gold leaf. This monument was gifted to France in 1989 from donors across the world as a thank you for the Statue of Liberty and as a symbol of the Franco-American friendship. About 4.5 million people visit the famous statue every year. By comparison, around 3.25 million people visit the London Eye each year. This makes the Statue of Liberty one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world. Almost 100 years after the statue was erected, Lady Liberty's torch was given a makeover. In 1984, the statue's original copper and glass torch was replaced with a new one covered in 24-karat gold leaf. The torch is the only place not accessible to visitors due to damage it previously sustained, making it unsafe to climb up there. The Statue of Liberty is 150 feet tall. That's like 10 giraffes sitting on each other's necks. Compared to the size of a person, you'd have to stand on the shoulders of your 25 friends to reach the torch in its right hand. The concrete base and pedestal make the statue even taller, 305 feet from the ground to the very top. So, let's get inside the thing. We have to go through the doors of a star-shaped base. Then you have a choice. Take the elevator up to the observation deck or go up the 192 steps. You go first. There are stairs for tourists to go up and another staircase to go down to avoid the crowds and traffic. The stairs take you to the height of a 6-story building, right up to the observation deck at the top of the pedestal. To get to the crown of the statue, we need to go to the 7th floor, where we see a double helix stairway. It runs right inside the iron pylons, the spine of the Statue of Liberty, designed by none other than Gustav Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower guy. And this stairway is double because there's one side for going up and the other for going down. And there's also some space where you can rest if you get tired while going up. Yeah, I've done it, and yes, you need it. And you need reservations. As you climb the statue, you can see exactly how the 300 copper sheets were attached to the metal frame. The story of how exactly they did that is riveting. And you can also distinguish specific details of the statue, like the folds of the dress and even locks of hair. 354 steps done. Congratulations! You've reached the observation deck in the crown of the Statue of Liberty. It's pretty cozy up there and only fits a couple of people. You can peer out over New York Harbor through 25 glass windows. They symbolize the gems of our planet. And there are powerful lanterns behind you that light up the glass. They turn on at night so that passing ships can see the statue's crown glow. Entry to the torch is not allowed for tourists, but hey, just for you, we'll open it up for a minute. To get up there, you have to go down. Yes, about to the neck of the statue. There's a hatch that leads you through a narrow passage into the right arm of the statue. Then you have to go up the stairs to the wrist, and then another ladder will lead you to the handle of the torch. Open the cylindrical door and, oh my, you're on the highest observation deck of the Statue of Liberty. For many years now, only workers have been allowed access here. Back at the beginning, this arm stood separately in Madison Square Park for 6 years to draw attention to that campaign until the funding issues were resolved. And before it even made it to the U.S., its head had been on display at the World's Fair in Paris to help raise money for the project. The statue's lamp was originally to serve as a lighthouse beacon, but it was not bright enough, just like me, and the light could barely make it to Manhattan. Sculptor Bartholdi offered to cover the entire statue in gold to make it brighter. That idea would have been crazy expensive, so it was never brought to life. The original spikes above its head got rusty, so what you see now was added way later.